All right, I'm going to walk you through a quick introduction to the GarageBand interface and then go through how we can use some pre-baked Apple loops to create your first little piece of music where we're just actually assembling snippets of sound that other people wrote into sort of like a musical found poem, right? Something that we didn't necessarily create the individual parts of, but that you choose and arrange in a way that is your own. So when you open GarageBand first, you're going to see this little dialog that has options for new project. And new empty project is generally how we're going to start things in this class. They do have some stuff in here like some project templates. They have this thing called the lesson store where you can, I guess, buy guitar, piano, and artist lessons. But we're going to go to the new project tab, empty project, and just hit choose. And so when we open a new empty project, we're given an option around what type of track we want our first track to be. When I say track, it's basically one, I guess, typically on a given track, you'd have one instrument or one microphone or one source of sound in your song. And your songs are going to typically be made up of quite a few tracks. You know, as few as 4 would be like an old style where you had a singer, a drummer, a guitarist, and a bassist. But we'll probably use many, many tracks. And so the different types are software instrument, which is where we'll get into in the coming days, where we use MIDI keyboards and synthesizers, and we actually write in digital notes that we can then swap. That same exact set of notes can be played on many different sounding instruments digitally. Audio is where we're going to do things like pre-recorded audio we'll drop in there, or if we're going to live record something using a microphone, that's like our real world audio. And we'll probably only use this first option in this class. And then drummer is another type of track where it's kind of a hybrid between these, where it looks like an audio track, but it's actually programmatically generated drums. And that can be interesting. We'll use that in this first project. But we're going to start with audio and the one that looks like a microphone. For input, we can choose this. You can select no input. If it has input 1 or something else, you can go ahead and change that to no input. We're not actually going to use our microphone in this project, but we do need an audio track to drop loops onto. And so we will say create. When you say create, this is what an empty GarageBand project with a single audio track looks like. You'll notice there's a kind of a lot going on the screen. So let's break this down. The library, this leftmost tab, and you'll see I'm still downloading some of the packs just like you all will be. But the library is where we can go and pick out different instruments. So notice we don't have very many options yet because I haven't finished downloading all of them. But under acoustic guitar, we've got a couple of different options. We can go back, or we should be able to go back. Into vocals. We can, I guess, scroll side to side. So the library is nice when we want to pick from different instruments that we're going to play on a MIDI keyboard, but for now we're going to hide that by clicking this little drawer up here or pressing Y on the keyboard. Down here we also have this thing called Smart Controls. What this looks like and allows you to change is going to depend on what track you have active. So for an audio track, we can change the equalization, so how strong the low frequencies, the mids, and the highs are. That's the same as like if you ever messed with the EQ in your car to make the bass sound louder or the treble to come out a little more. But for now, we don't actually need this open either, so we're going to click up here on the Smart Controls to hide that. And now we're left with a good bit of screen real estate. This is our first audio track. This little timeline along the top is not measured in seconds, but in bars of music. So this is our first bar, and then right there, not marked as bar number 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And you'll notice this little gray box here. That's where if I were to turn on looping, that'll turn yellow. That's where our current loop is set. And I can always just drag on the timeline to set a new loop. And I can click on the yellow to turn it off. So we're not worried about that yet. Up here, we have some basic information about where we are in our timeline. So we are at bar 1, beat 1. That's where this little playhead is. If I click here, you'll notice it went to bar 3, beat 1. In the middle, we're at bar 3, beat 3. Right now, our tempo is set to 120 beats per minute. That's the standard in GarageBand. A higher tempo will yield higher tempo music. That sounds faster, more rushed. Slower will be more like down tempo, more relaxed pacing. This is our time signature, and we're not going to deal too much with that. If you have musical training, you're familiar with time signatures, but this has to do with how many beats are in a bar and which type of note is considered a beat. And then this is the scale, and if you're into music theory and have training that way, you can mess with the scale, but we're going to leave that alone for most of this class. And then we also have over here a little count-in setting that we can toggle on and off, and a metronome that we can turn on and off. And so if I were to hit play or hit the space bar, you'll hear the metronome is clicking. I can stop that by clicking on metronome, and it turns off and back on. So sometimes it's helpful to record with a metronome, and I can always hit return to return my playhead to the very beginning of my song. If I were to hit record right now, because this count in is selected, it's going to give me 4 counts before it starts actually recording. So you'll notice the playhead goes back into the negative. Oh, but I have no input selected. Okay, so we can stop. Of course, we had nothing recorded because we have no mic set up, but that's totally okay. So what we're going to do for this first assignment, just to get some experience moving around audio and messing with things in GarageBand, is click on this loops icon over here in the top right. This loop browser is, by the time you finish downloading everything, going to be full of tons of really good loops. And if you click on one, it'll automatically play. So there's a little shuffle drum beat. I can click again to stop it. You can also sort by instrument, by genre, or descriptors. So I'm going to look for some guitar to start with. I might scroll through here. Let's see, across the lead guitar. Okay, I kind of like that. That reminds me of like something Blink-182 would have written when I was growing up. So I'm going to drag that directly onto my timeline and just let go. And you'll notice the tempo of my project changed because it was empty, and this was recorded at 115 beats per minute. So if I hit play or spacebar now, you can hear the metronome, but you can hear that little piece of music. And you notice as the playhead gets beyond this piece of music here, all we hear is the metronome. I'm going to turn that metronome off. Since we're using pre-recorded audio, I don't need help keeping time. It's already in time. And if I wanted to hear this over and over, I could click and drag up here on the timeline, and now I've got my loop set to these first 2 bars, and so it'll play continuously. Okay, so that sounds just fine, and I might use that as an intro, and then I'm going to look for, here's an accompanying part called the rhythm guitar. Okay, oops, so that sounds fine. So I might want to have the lead guitar play once on its own, and then bring in the rhythm guitar and have them play together. So if I move this, you'll notice it moves instead of copying, but if I hold Option while I move it, that little green plus comes up, and that means I'm creating another copy of it. And so now what I might do is set my loop here and hit play to see what these two sound like together. Okay, I'm going to turn my loop off and go back to the beginning and listen to the first 3 bars or 4 bars together. Okay, cool. So this piece obviously was written, just based on the name, it was written to go together. So these really easily fit together. Of course, you're going to expect it to get a little more creative with the stuff you find, but I think that sounds like a nice intro to a song, and what my ears are wanting there is right at the 8-bar mark, or 6 bars, I guess, is for there to be some drums. And so we could come in here, and under instruments, we could find a beat. So there's lots of beats in here. I don't think that really fits the vibe of the song, and so I want to introduce you to another type of track. So we added this second track just by dragging and dropping a loop. It created a new track for us automatically. We can also manually create new tracks using this plus icon up here. So if I click plus, I get those same options, only this time I'm going to choose drummer track. And we'll say create. Now it's going to automatically, stick it in between my other tracks. So I'm going to drag this whole track down below, and it's going to create 8 bars of drummer track. Now what I want is there to be a little bit of a build up. So I'm going to have, lead guitar, then lead and rhythm. If I highlight these, I can copy all of that together by holding Option and dragging. And then right there is where I want my drums to come in. And so I can shorten this drum by hovering over the end of it and seeing this little icon and drag that so the drums are only playing for these 4 or so bars. And I'm going to turn my loop on so that when I hit play, it automatically plays this part. So by default, when I just click drummer track, this is what I get. Okay, so that already sounds pretty good. You'll notice down here I've got some controls related to the drummer track. And so I can affect how hi-hat intensive, that's this part of it's like the higher cymbals that we use sometimes to keep the backbone of the beat alive. So if I click around on here, just listen to what happens. So you'll notice I can click on a drum to have it included or not included in the beat, so that as I clicked on the kick and the snare, they went away. And then these little notches are sort of like the complexity or the freedom that is included, that the drummer is taking, this virtual drummer. And so you can create really nice changing effects by having, sort of a breakdown section where maybe you just have kick. Maybe we add some toms. That's going to be up to you. Another thing that we can do is shorten this, so it's only maybe 2 bars long, and you'll notice that the length now is 1 bar. It shows up as I'm doing that. So I might create a couple copies of this drummer track and set each of them, to be played a little bit differently. So if I click on this first one, I like this half pipe setting. That's just a name they gave for the beat preset. But I might, after each bar, switch to a different one. So I'll change my second one to mixtape, my third one to new kicks, and my fourth one to Ocean Boulevard. And let's hear what this sounds like now. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. And then what I might do is maybe drop out the rhythm guitar and keep just the lead and the drums. And so I might highlight all of these and repeat them. And now let's listen to what this sounds like. I'm going to turn off my loop and start here, where we transition from rhythm guitar to no rhythm guitar. Okay, so in my opinion, drums are a little too busy and they're competing with the lead guitar, but I might go back and change that, right? I could click on each of these and reduce the complexity. Maybe I take out some of the drumming, who knows? But that's the real basics of how I've selected a couple of samples. I've copied some of them at different moments. I might have the lead guitar actually drop out here when the drums first come in, who knows? Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so we've now seen how to grab a couple of different samples, put them on different tracks, the basics of how to use the drummer track, and you'll notice there's actually different drummers in here too, and they each have their own style. So Kyle is our pop rock drummer, Logan is our retro rock drummer, Anders is hard rock, and so on. I don't have all of them downloaded yet, but this is an incredibly powerful tool for creating some stuff. Yours does not need to sound anything like mine, but what you do need to do is grab a fistful of samples and drop them in and start to arrange them, where I'm thinking about, I want this to come in at this moment and go out at this moment, then come back, things like that. We're not going to get into automation yet, but we are going to have, you should have more than 3 tracks really, but we're going to have multiple tracks, and I need yours to go at least 32 bars long, so that you have ample time to maybe create a build-up, something really expressive, and then maybe sort of a wind down. And we're going to create our first little mini track for your first assignment that'll be at least 32 bars long. If you want to go longer, absolutely. The other thing I want to highlight before we go is if I change the tempo, this is really cool, these pre-baked samples will actually be slowed down to play at a totally different tempo and change the feel of the song. So I'm going to change this from 115 to 90 and hit enter. Now listen to what we have. Really changes the feel of the song. If I speed this way up, let's go to 140 BPM. Now listen. Okay, cool. So you can mess around with the BPM, the tempo of your song, and have fun with it. I really hope you'll enjoy getting to look through these Apple loops, and of course, there's a big download. You'll see this is like 15, 16 gigabytes of stuff, but there's an incredible amount of instruments and sounds and loops included for free with GarageBand, which is just awesome. In general, if your screen starts to get cluttered, anything that's dark up here, you can click on and it will hide it, and it will free you up some space. If you bump into like, there's not enough room for me to add more audio, this is considered like the end of our track, so we can drag this way to extend it. When you finish writing your 32 bars of music, and I'm going to use this shortened version, drag this to the end of where your song stops and so that the little dark area begins where your song ends. And then what we're going to do so you can submit your music is you're going to go to File. First of all, you're going to save your project in a folder specific to this class. Give it a name. You can call it 32 bar practice or something. But what we want to do is, I'm not sure where, is it under record? I'm looking for something called bounce. Let's see. Maybe if I hit Command B. No? Okay. Let's go to Save As. This is just a little bit different in GarageBand. And we'll call this 32 bar practice. I don't want it to save in the GarageBand folder, so I'm going to choose right on my desktop for now. Of course, you will go into Documents and into your JanTerm folder that you've created in Finder. You say Save. But that's a GarageBand project. I want the actual music exported, and so I was thinking this is going to be the same as Logic Pro. It looks like it's a little different. If we go to Save As, nope, that still doesn't give me. Looks like I'll have to get back to you on some instructions on how you can actually export your music and upload it to Schoology, but for now, enjoy that quick introduction to the GarageBand interface and using loops, and I will see you soon.